I think the issue of risk is quite worrying because the question is always, what don't I know? And so the problem for the C-level is they don't know what they don't know. And they have a feeling that there's going to be something going on underneath the surface, and the question is, how am I going to find out about that? So there's a real responsibility for the managers of the value streams and the functions and the portfolio of value within the business to communicate those issues back to the C-level. Otherwise, they can't know. So the question for my money is, what do we need to pass up to the C-level so that we actually deal with that question of insecurity or worry or nervousness? And that needs to be something which will express accurately the level of risk exposure which we're facing down in the business, but also the fact that we're going to do something about it. So for me, the two aspects that we need to communicate back are to the board, what do you need to know about and what do you need to act on? So attention and action are the two sort of key aspects that we need to communicate back. The main gaps in terms of predicting future performance are, I think, coming from both ends. So the first question that the board needs to answer for the business is, how much risk is too much risk? So is this particular investment or this particular project or this particular value stream, it may have high reward associated with it, but it will also have a level of risk exposure. And the question is that too much? And the whole question of expressing, understanding and expressing risk appetite is something which is not very well understood. But the business needs to know from the C-level how much risk is too much for us at this level so that we can operate within that framework, within that threshold. So the one missing piece is from the top down, please tell me what the risk appetite is for the business. And then the other piece is to match that coming back, what is our current level of risk exposure and is it within that overall appetite? And I think we've got lacks on both sides of that equation. So the board aren't expressing their risk appetite clearly, and then the business doesn't have a way of meeting that to know overall, are we within the threshold or are we actually overexposed? Well, again, taking it from a risk perspective, the key thing is, and I mentioned attention and action. Those are the two things that the board really needs to know about. So what should I know that I don't know, and what should I be doing that I'm not doing? And so from a risk perspective, there are the big risks, so the ones that bubble up from the bottom that could have an organisation-wide or a business-wide impact. But there's also the aggregated risks, which are common risks across different value streams or different projects, which have a common cause and a common impact, which together have a synergistic effect that are much bigger than they would be on their own. And often you'll find there are common points of failure or points of weakness in a business that affect all of their projects or several value streams. And then together, because they have a common cause, if it happens in one place, it will happen in many places and then have a much bigger impact. And I think those relationships, those interrelationships between risks at the lower level operationally or in projects, the connections are not visible, so that if something is triggered that goes across the piece and it has an organisational wide impact, then the C-level are not aware of it until suddenly it happens and then it's too late. The issue of instantly reacting is very interesting because you need to be prepared beforehand in order to instantly react in an appropriate way. So I would say that what we need to do is respond, not react. So reaction tends to come from the gut, it's instant, it's how you feel at the moment, and you just do what seems right, whereas response is more considered. The problem is that with a lot of these events, they happen so fast, they come from left field or from our blind spots, that we don't have time to consider them on the spot, so we have to do our consideration beforehand. And coming back from a risk perspective, this is where our risk appetite is really important. To have those thresholds already defined so we know how much risk is too much risk, and we have contingency plans in place if we actually breach the threshold, so that if something suddenly happens which breaches our threshold and we're overexposed, we already know what we're going to do. So it's a question of pre-positioning of those kind of responses. So when we have to respond quickly, it's not a gut level reaction. It is a considered response. We just considered it previously. And that's what risk management is about. It's about pre-managing the future, about making ourselves ready for whatever comes along so that when it comes, we're in the best possible place to react.